Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate prose. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. We are officially live here, session 80, Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast, brought to you, as always, by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, Benchmark Athletics, and in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. Session 80 already. We're in mid-July. Gabby Boulding is our guest this evening. We'll get to her bio here shortly. Just wanted to thank everybody once again. It's been a true honor to sort of connect with people. Gabby and I are meeting for the first time and hopefully introducing her and her work and her passion and her path to new therapists that have been around the block for a while, and to everybody out there who's picking this up, therapist or not therapist for that matter. Some really important topics to talk about, but more than anything, Gabby, just to get to know you and your story a little bit and showcase this as we move along. I had this amazing opportunity to work with WFAT Friday night and just waiting to publish that podcast, but just touching on all of the important pieces of what this profession is, what this profession can bring, and this fresh blood of you just sort of coming out and being in the academic space. So I won't throw away the bio. I won't ruin the bio. Let me jump in there first, and then we'll say hi and get this thing rolling. So Gabby Boulding is a certified athletic therapist. She started her journey at the University of Guelph with a degree in Human Kinetics and while working with the Gryphons football team. She went on to do her athletic therapy degree at Sheridan College, graduating in 2019, and then on across the pond to complete her Master's of Performance Psychology at the University of Edinburgh. In 2021, she returned to Canada and is now doing a mix of field and clinical work right here in Toronto. She has already had 2 papers recognized by the CATA. In 2019, she won the Literature Writing Award for Candidates for her article, Kinesiophobia and its Impairment of Successful Return to Sport After Anterior Cruciate Ligament Injury and Reconstruction. And then most recently in June of 2021, received the Research Writing Award for Certified Therapists for her work, The Therapist-Athlete Relationship, Psychological Effects of Kinesiophobia Experience and Injury Rehabilitation. Both papers are linked in topics and connect the psychology and mental aspects into rehabilitation. This more recent paper was Gabby's master's dissertation. Gabby, thank you so much for being here. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Let's just say hi, and then let's see how you got to where you are and where you're looking to take things.
Awesome. Thank you. So happy to kind of jump in. I've listened a little bit and love hearing everyone's stories. So glad to help and share mine.
Yeah, no, amazing stuff. And just sort of reading through the bio for those that are out there and hearing the things that you've already accomplished. Obviously, this has been a passion thing for you in terms of research and academia, and then you get to tie in travel and go across to Europe and do a master's degree there. So lots to, I guess, unpack or unravel here, but let's take it back in time. And sort of always one of the first questions that I love to ask, maybe more than loving to ask, is actually loving to hear the answer. Where did the interest in athletic therapy start for you in the performance space? Where did that sort of get ignited, and how did that grow through your journey?
So for me, I was always an athlete. I was a very active kid, but I had no idea what athletic therapy was until I went to university. And I actually started my first degree as a biomed student thinking I was going to go doctor route somewhere along that line.
Mhm.
And I had re-injured my knee and I was competing as a figure skater on the varsity team at Guelph. And someone told me that I got free athletic therapy. And so I got introduced to the world of athletic therapy and all of a sudden realized that this was the perfect balance between my competitive side, my athletic side, and still working with the human body that I wanted to do. So I kind of just spiraled from there. I got involved with a little bit of the clinic side at Guelph, became a student trainer, got to work with the Griffin football team, did that for 3.5 years, and then went to Sheridan because I was like, okay, if I need a certification to actually do the job, I guess that's the next step. So that was, I guess, the beginning of it. And then from there, it just never stopped.
Yeah, no, that's a great beginning, and I think those personal experiences, right, and tied to it, and that piece is interesting as well. And I want to sort of maybe come around to the psychology piece of this as well, with you being an MSc in that space, and obviously taking your dissertation in that way as well. But that piece in the OUA, in U Sports, the athletic therapists that are employed across the country in the universities here with free access for student athletes.
Mhm.
I think that's an amazing piece in our schools where we have this opportunity to connect and educate student athletes as well as student therapists, as well as sort of showcase the profession. What was your experience like at Guelph as a student therapist? And then just to sort of let marinate as we talk here, the piece for me that I always find interesting as well is when student athletes leave university and they no longer have that athletic therapist. Have we set them up for failure because they become so dependent on that free care, or are we setting up independence in some way or some form or fashion, or could we do a better job? So a lot of things there to unpack, but your experience as a student therapist first before certifying, some mentors, your experiences along the way.
My experience at Guelph was amazing. So I began with Judy and Gunnar, who were working at the time in the clinic side, but then quickly got shifted over to football.
Mhm.
And I worked with 2 different head therapists over the couple of years with just the football program. So I had a number of kind of mentors along the way, and they each brought something different. And the thing I learned very quickly was that it wasn't textbook necessarily. So I was given so many viewpoints and so many different ways of doing something right off the hop, which I loved. And my experience started as something that was going to initially just be game day. And I think the therapist saw in me that I wanted to be there and I wanted to be involved with the team, and that relationship, which kind of spirals back to the psychology side of things, it's only built when you're there and you're committed to doing it 100% and you're with your athletes all the time. So it started as, just Saturdays, just game day. And then it became, I was at the field house every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely loved it. I did it because I wanted to be there. I wasn't getting paid. It wasn't a placement at the time. So I was getting absolutely no academic credit for it. And I was spending probably more time there than I did at any job I worked during university.
Right.
So
Right. And I think that's another piece, right? Like, this is where you find your passion. If you still want to do it and you've been doing it for free, in the moment, you don't really realize, but in looking back, not a mistake there. I learned a lot. Like you said, lots of mentors, lots of experience, and you got to see sort of, there are many ways to do this, and there are many different ways and different takes on things, and each are maybe not equally effective, but certainly have their merits, right? And I think that's a huge part of the practicum experience for therapy students, for people in the performance space, is to go, right, to take the opportunity, to take the risk, and sort of buy into the experience, and allow yourself that opportunity to grow and see those different perspectives, approaches, etc. So good for you. And then the transition over to Sheridan, 3.5 years with a degree already, and then into Sheridan, must have been, I would hope, an easy acceptance on their part. But anyway, you get into the program there, and what was that experience like at Sheridan before moving on to your master's? And sort of, did either or, Guelph, Sheridan, all of it combined, is that what drove you to your master's? But start with Sheridan, and then we can move from there.
So moving into Sheridan was a really quick but easy transition.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually accepted direct entry into second year because of my background at Guelph and my academic grades and everything, which was amazing. As a student that's done a lot of school, having an extra year of not paying for it and doing it is wonderful. But even better, so I went straight into second year, so full-blown placements, activity, all of that. So I never really missed a beat in that aspect. My year, I don't know, looking back on it, I know people look at certain years, but our year was so great. So I came into a group of people that was just a very tight-knit community, and we were very good at helping each other all the way through school stuff, academic, personal, and the things we did outside of it as well. So I was very lucky in that aspect. And then going forward to my master's, I was actually one of those people that was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm not doing any more school.
Nice.
And then that quickly changed. So in my last year at Sheridan, at the time, I don't know if it's the same anymore, but we had to write a literature review paper as a fourth year project. And it was an entire class. And it was that paper, which was the original paper I was awarded the first CATA award for, that as soon as I got into the topic, that made me want to do more. And that paper led me to, okay, maybe I could do a master's. What would it look like? What type of topic areas could I look at? And one thing led to the next, and I ended up overseas.
Yeah, wow. And again, sort of taking the opportunity for all that it was worth, right? And I've been privy to the athletic therapy program at York, and then of late a little bit more at Sheridan, and some really great topics there, some really great courses that, again, when you're embedded in them, you sometimes see them as just another thing to get done, but as you reflect on them, as you just have, you've captured it, right? Like that led you to the next step, and you didn't even know that next step, and you had actually almost closed the door, and here you kick it open, and away you go. You get to travel overseas, and that experience for you, how different was that as you crossed into Europe and experienced things there in a master's? Was there placement opportunity there? Was that strictly academic? What was that like in your experience?
So the placement stuff, there wasn't really, it was a purely academic based or research and academic based program. It was a 1-year program, which also unfortunately more than half of which ended up during the pandemic side. So
Right.
My year was different than a lot of previous years in the program. My research changed along the way, everything kind of shifted, but we had 2 semesters worth of classwork, and we learned a bunch of different topics. So my course was actually not athletic based. It was, so performance psychology could be taken into business, into sport, theater, performing arts, anything and everything. So everything we touched upon in school was a little more broad in the sense of teamwork and coaching and stress and anxiety and those types of topics that could then be in your own research given to you to take wherever you wanted to lead it, which very similar to the Sheridan class when we had to do that paper. I loved the ability of being allowed to take something, a broad area and a broad topic where here's a project, but you narrow down your focus on anything that you're interested in. And to me, that's why I think I kept going in school, because when you're allowed to focus on something you're super interested in, then it doesn't feel like work. And that's that passion side that comes back again. You end up in a wormhole of research, but you just want to know more. You're not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because I actually want to learn it.
I think that's amazing, and what a great capture. And for those that are still in school or just getting out or looking to change sort of paths, I think these are lessons that we learn, and to be able to navigate that and experience that, finding the passion and finding the things that matter to us ultimately create a relationship, right? Like with what we're going to do and how we're going to go about doing it and what we're going to carve out or who we're going to work with or for. And you start to establish a value set perhaps, or a philosophy or a take, at least leading with intuition, with the base foundation of something like performance psychology. And I love that. We sometimes think, you go in and you have to know how to talk to an athlete a certain way, but there's a base foundation here when it comes to performance and when it comes to psychology. And I'm sure, not from experience, but when we put them together, that it's a human being that we're talking to, and therefore performance is universal, no matter how you cut it. Is it sort of a fair summation?
Yes, for sure. There's so many things that could happen to someone, and they're going to have a toll on your work life, if you're doing an athletic activity, which might also be your work, um, that kind of thing, your family environment, your studies. And I think to me, that's what kind of led me into the psychology side of things,
Right.
was that both in my own personal experiences as a student athlete, but also with working so much with student athletes, was that especially at that time, a university type age, there's so much going on in a person's life that you can't treat just an injury. It's definitely, it doesn't work. You have to know about what's causing their anxiety or their stress and pain, what types of fears they have, their previous history. It's just, as you said, it's a human. It's not just an injury. So
yeah, and again, highlighted very nicely. I think this is an area that perhaps in reflecting through experience and in reflecting in through conversations like this one, perhaps the psychology piece could play a greater role in our schooling, in our education, right? Maybe for all of us, who knows? Just in terms of how we relate and how we communicate and how we navigate humanity in general. I think there's a lot of warrant to it, obviously, and you do too. You followed that path a number of times, but let's kick over a little bit towards the common, at least the common word in both of those papers. Credited by the CATA is kinesiophobia, right? And so when we talk about kinesiophobia, we know kinesiology, we know phobia, but kinesiophobia, could you summarize that for listeners out there, and then why the interest in that on your side?
Sure. So kinesiophobia is essentially an irrational fear of activity or movement that's often caused by either previous injury or experience, that then leads people to not want to perform or do an activity. It could be as simple as, I don't want to go to the gym. But it often doesn't arise in such a way as that people can vocally say, I'm afraid to move, I'm just not going to do it. It shows up in such things as hesitation or holding back slightly or not going to one direction. So we tend to see it without knowing a name for it. But it's our body's way of saying, I don't want to do this again. Whatever happened before is too painful, or the idea that it may happen again is too painful that I'm just going to completely avoid it. And I think it's a huge thing to be able to notice as a therapist. And it's a huge thing to be able to treat, because if we want to return somebody to sport or to activity, we want to be able to return them 100%. And if you can't be at what you were at before, or you can't go one direction, you're not at 100%.
Absolutely. And here it is. Here's the connection directly through psychology and movement, right? This is mind, body, and body, mind. The connection here is entangled. It is not given the credit, I don't think, during the rehab process, during the training process even. Let's forget injury and just talk processing of programming for athletes and with other human beings. But this is a very real thing in terms of return to play, especially. And I know you looked at ACL injuries and reconstruction. We have a couple post-operative patients currently in our facility, and there's a little bit here in terms of, where is the hesitation here, or the timeline says you should be doing this. But you're not doing those things. So where are you at? How do you meet yourself where you're at? And what do we do as practitioners to help athletes become aware that although you're not on a quote unquote top tier timeline, you're not matching where you quote unquote should be. You are where you are. So let's tap into that and find out how to navigate this. What are some of the things that you took away sort of from your research with the kinesiophobia and with the return to play, and that you would relay to any therapist out there when it comes to what we can do to help athletes through these things, or with these things, or acknowledge these?
I think one of the biggest things is that when we're in school, we always mention psychology, and we look at it as a return to sport aspect. And as you mentioned, kind of at the return to sport time.
Right.
And instead, it needs to be embedded all the way through. It needs to be something that we focus on and realize right from the initial injury to how are they feeling about it, the pain, how is it affecting other aspects of their life, all the way through to return to sports. So I think embracing that it's okay. So not that it, as an athlete, so many people look at athletes and go, they can't have fear, they're driven, they want to be back on the field, that's just the athlete mentality. But accepting that it's completely normal and having that conversation every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second research paper had a number of professional athletes involved in it. And that adds another layer, because so many times professional athletes who are working for their money and their job is their sport,
right,
they won't admit that they have a fear or an anxiety of returning, because that could cost them their job, their position on the team, their finances. And I think it's our job as the athletic therapist in that case to really dig into what's going on and make sure that it's a part of the rehab, as I said, all the way through, so that when you're ready to go back, it's not surprising you at that point. Right. And so there are a number of things that came up in types of what makes a relationship better. And I thought it was very interesting that there's the academic side and the education type of qualifications side. So often we might think that if I was looking up to go pick out a new therapist, and I moved to a new city and I need to see an athletic therapist, I'll type it into Google and you'll look up someone's credentials, their history, we read off their bios, and they have this many years of experience, or they've done this work with this team or this professional athlete, that must mean they're good. But that's not necessarily what makes the relationship ideal. Every person is different, and one therapist might work amazing with one athlete, and somebody else who's just as qualified or maybe has less years of experience might work better with somebody else. And that, I think, is what makes those relationships unique, is that there isn't a one size fit all, and you can't just say that one person's going to be the best at any of it.
Yeah.
So
great captures. I think these are fundamentally solid. Not that you need my validation. You've clearly demonstrated that. But I just feel that there is a piece here that goes such a long way. In our space, we're working with a lot of high-level athletes currently, high level in terms of either making a living or bordering on making a living doing this. And I've been asked a number of times, what qualifications do I need to work with you, or to work with the athletes that you work with? And for me, I kind of eliminate, letters after names and just try to deal with who's in front of me, get on the floor. How do you relate? What's your body language like? How can you relate to the quiet athlete, the boisterous athlete, those other pieces, and that psychology piece? Again, you touched on it as sort of a foundational piece that has to come almost before the return to play. Do you think there's merit to taking in components of the psychology as part of our intake with athletes? We're so concerned with medical intake and physical medicine. We do orthopedic evaluations, we check heart rate and blood pressure. I think it's becoming more and more sort of regular for mental health to have some component in that, but could there be a heavier, I guess, a good fit for more focus on that area, even as athletic therapists? Listen, anecdotally speaking, I haven't done the research. I didn't spend a lot of time in psychology, but through 15 years of practice, the one thing that I'll tell every other therapist that I meet that is asking for advice, and some that aren't even asking for advice, is that if you don't know how your athlete shakes a hand on a good day and a bad day, you're missing something. Because if you don't know which shoe they tie first, or how they chew their gum when they're happy, or when they're feeling not so good, you're missing a large portion of their ability to train, their ability to rehab, their ability to perform, and all of these pieces. Is there certain things in your purview, I guess, in your view of things, that could be done better at the front end with us intaking athletes to team sport, or to individual sport for that matter?
I think for sure. And I think it's not actually as big of a step away as we think it is, because there's so many questions and so many things that we ask when we are doing an initial assessment or an initial intake, that we could log either on paper or in the back of our own mind as answers to this person's psychology. And those are simple things. Like, we always ask about injury history. Have you done this before? How long did it take to come back? Those types of things all play a part. So you could kind of see if someone's injured something 6 times before, you can make an assumption that, okay, maybe they might be hesitant about it. But then you could also just ask a further question. about what the returns were like or what the rehabs were like and that kind of stuff. And that gives you the intel a little bit more about how they might behave or how they might mentally look at rehab in general.
Right.
Also things like how many times they've been injured. These play into just an athlete's overall mindset. And sometimes, again, if you know your athlete really well, if they're never injured and then they're coming to you with, I'm hurt, usually we say that's probably serious, right? That kind of thing. Yeah. And for sure, we're taught in school that knowing your athletes is a huge thing. And I think it's just recognizing how much that role can take. It's not as simple as just knowing your athletes and knowing, okay, they put right shoe on before left, or they want their spat done one way versus another. Mm-hmm. It can actually turn into you being the one to recognize when an issue is happening. Yeah. And I think we've talked about it a lot in the sense of now head injuries and concussions. Right. Because we know athletes tend to, if they're going to lie about something, they often go, I'm fine when they're hit in the head. But you can take that for any injury. Like you can move on and notice when someone's not their same happy person, or if they're not their same focus. It all goes back to knowing what they are on that good day or the initial day. Right. And leading it through the whole way.
Yeah, and bringing it back to sort of the students and the student experience, and you're not too far removed from that. But in terms of knowing our athletes, I don't know. I just feel like there is a lot of emphasis put in our mind when we're going through school to know what tests to do, right? Like what orthopedic test do I need to do to make sure I get the answer right? What orthopedic test do I have to do to make sure like I get the right check mark for the test, those kinds of things. And that's all part of a foundational education that's understood. But in working with students again and navigating this space, your ability to relate to the other human being who's on the table or on the floor or wherever they might be, I think goes so much further than a skill set in terms of what credentials you have, what courses you've taken. And it's when we can merge these together, we create sort of this desirable practitioner, right? For any walk of life, athlete, non-athlete, whatever we're identifying as. And it's funny you bring that up with head injuries, but injuries as well. Not funny in the sense that head injuries are funny, but we just had an offensive lineman, take off to CFL camp. Yeah. And the only time that he would ever come for anything, you knew it was bad, right? And that's knowing sort of a little bit of the psychology of an offensive lineman, but also knowing who that athlete is. And if he's coming to ask for something, he's doing it quietly. He's doing it sort of behind closed doors and navigating that a little bit. So some really interesting takes. And I think the psychology piece, is that something you're going to continue with, or are you just going to embody this as you move? You're now sort of navigating clinic and field work here in Ontario and Toronto. Is there more sway to do sort of the psychological side of things, or is it I'm going to be a therapist, everybody who walks in is they're going to get my best and I'm going to know who they are inside and out, so to speak?
It's a little bit of a mix. So I never and still don't have the mindset that I want to necessarily certify or become a psychologist necessarily. And I definitely am not the type of person that wants to sit in a room and do just psychology treatments and that. But I want to include it in the way I am as a therapist and everything I do with my athletes and my work. I've got a whole bunch of things, like I said, just restarting again in clinic and field work now that everything's open. I've got some stuff in the works for a job that's using exercise and activity to help mental health. So a little bit of that kind of crossing over. Right. But again, I think it's never going to be on one side. I kind of always took it as a way to improve my abilities as a therapist and what beautiful. I do and treatments.
Yeah, beautiful. And then you open the door sort of to the next question, I guess, in sort of a non-questioning way, the interdisciplinary approach or the transdisciplinary language that we use, not having to be everything to everybody who walks through the door, but understanding that there is somebody or a professional that everybody can see, and we can unload our own plate by not trying to save the world, but by trying to get people what they need and not having to take all of that on. Recommendations for people in terms of as a therapist, I would imagine that you're fairly open to the idea of having others around you and supporting athletes, psychology, these kinds of things. This is a big one of late. Obviously, mental health and COVID has knocked identity for a spin with athletes, with practitioners, with human beings in general, have lost a bit of who they are and what they stood for, maybe perhaps prior to. And as we come out the back end, things are very different now. So interdisciplinary approach and your sort of take on that and where psychology, I guess, plays, and relationships, right? Like we've talked about already, relationships with athletes, relationships across the board are going to matter. What's your take on sort of, I don't know, I guess massaging that into the workplace or the work environment?
I'm a big fan of it. I absolutely believe that there are so many times where you're not going to have the answer, or you might not be the perfect person to be working solely with someone. And that could be referring someone out when something is completely not in your wheelhouse, or that could just be as much as consulting another professional and getting their opinion.
Right.
I've done that in everything that I've done. I've done that in my own research. I believe in that just in the same way as I would asking a fellow student for help if I didn't understand something. Those types of things, I think, is what just makes us better people, but also better in our jobs. Like, there's no way every athletic therapist is going to remember every academic thing we learned. And I think admitting to yourself that that doesn't mean that you're not good at your job, but knowing when you have to ask a question or consult a textbook or refer to someone else it's a big thing. And it doesn't make you any less of a professional, for sure.
Yeah, and sort of that idea of being humble enough to know that you don't need to know everything, and being open enough to receive criticism without taking it personally or using it as feedback, right? To deliver better programming or different programming. It's interesting. We were at a summit this morning talking about inner peace to find outer peace, right? And so taking care of the self as a therapist. I'll take you there because I feel like this is a thing that hits close to home potentially for you as well. Understanding who I am allows me to understand a little bit more of who you are, because we share something. We share trials and tribulations, we share trauma, we share all of the things. We share suffering as human beings, and psychology of however you want to approach it, Western science, Eastern-based science. There are common threads here through the human experience. My relationship with all of the humans, but the environment, the training environment, injury rehab, all of those other things is based on my biases, the way that I have learned to this point in time. So I have my own lens, which means if I can accept or be a little bit more clear in terms of where I'm coming from, then I can see that really yours is the same as mine. It's just coming through a different lens. So your relationships with things are yours to own, and through your own lens and through your own historical biases. So as a practitioner, how critical is that? I know, again, like I don't mean to harp on this, but you're a couple years out of school, you've done a master's, you're working in the psychology space. I feel like you're energetically, you're very diverse in terms of where you can fit in and what you're looking to do and potentially into the future and have done in the past. Where does the self-care fit in for you, or what would you advise for therapists, either just coming out of school or in general? What have you taken away?
To me, it comes back to enjoyment and passion. And that has been something that I think, if you string it back, that's why I did so much school. That's why I still did it. And anything that you do, whether it's work or self-care or personal relationship wise, if you're not enjoying it, at least to some degree, then you shouldn't be doing it. And I think that's what, for me, self-care is that you have to be, something has to be coming from you in the first place. Your motivation has to be coming from you. And that's in my work, but that's also in me recognizing that sometimes I need to put the work down and do something for me, whether that was traveling and going abroad and doing all these things. So many people ask me when I first said, like, yep, absolutely, I'm doing this and going abroad. They're like, oh my God, it's going to this, and this. There's so much money. Why are you doing it? Why not do a program at home? Can it be transferred? And so much of the self-care is doing something just because, yeah, it was an academic program. Could I have done a master's somewhere else? Probably. But for me, that was my self-care part of it, was doing it abroad, going to Scotland, a place that I'd been before and I absolutely loved.
Right.
And so I combine the two together. Is
And I
I
think,
guess my short story there.
yeah, no, and I think that's beautiful. I think it really just captures a lot of the pieces. In terms of going abroad and coming back in the pandemic, right? Here we are, you're coming back, you're settling back into Toronto, things are starting to open back up. I don't know. I guess this is maybe more opinion than psychology, or maybe it's a little bit of both through your experience. But where are you at with this, and how can we help athletes? How can we help each other navigate back into this space? Right. I read a lot about online and how online sessions are just as good as in-person sessions, and these different pieces, which you can show me the science on that. But I also understand the anecdotal experience of human touch and being in person and sharing a laugh in multiple dimensions, or a cry for that matter, versus this flat screen two-dimensional world that we're living in. What's your stance on that? And we won't hold you to it. I think this is just more of an interest topic for me, and if you don't want to answer it, don't feel you have to, but where do you stand on sort of that?
I think opinion wise, I'm definitely more on the side that there is something to be said about being in person, no matter what it is. And I think technology is wonderful, and what we can do with it now is amazing. So having been abroad and being able to keep in contact with people at home. So I didn't have any contact, like physical contact with people at home for 18 months.
Right.
And those types of things, it's great to have technology. And I think it does give us a decent amount of what it's like to still have somebody in your life, or relationships or connection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very helpful. And I think without that, this pandemic would have been a lot harder on people for sure. But being in person there is something completely different about it. I have not treated online. I've done sessions online. So with my psychology background and the master's, my flatmates and I that were all in the same program, we ran mental health and mental skills sessions with a couple of teams that we got associated with in Scotland. And I think those can be very helpful in just communicating in these types of spaces.
Yep.
But in terms of our athletic therapy, rehab, and our job, I don't think there's anything that's the same as working hands-on and being with someone, even if it's 90% exercise-based. Yep. The ability to see it in person, move around someone's body, cue them, coach them, hand touch, there's always something there.
Right.
And I don't think you can get that through a screen.
Yeah, the kinesthetic feedback and the energetic things that happen, and it's pretty tough to walk the sidelines virtually, right? As things get moving back, we need to be on the sidelines and ready and prepared. And there's a lot of things that go into this as well. Readiness when it comes to psychology, but physical readiness as well, right? We don't have to look too far. I think there were 4 Achilles ruptures on day 1 of camp with the Saskatchewan Roughriders as they started camp, and all the best to each one of those athletes and the team out there to recover through those. But preparedness comes in multiple levels as well. And I'm not saying they weren't prepared. I'm not there. I don't have any inside information as to how or why or any of those pieces, but psychological readiness, physical readiness, they go hand in hand. How would you advise approaching that piece? I know we talked on it a little bit at the beginning and making sure, but how do I check in with you, Gabby? And I say like, hey, look, your knee's got full range. You're at the required 80% strength from right to left that the surgeon requires. You're at 7.5 months. So that means we can start doing A, B, and C. You're running routes quite well. You're rounding turns. We're going to start cutting a little bit. Psychologically, what are some things that I can have in terms of a conversation? Or I don't know if you have resources at the ready, but where do you go from there? And how do you check in with athletes, or what would you advise sort of in terms of that conversation?
I think coming into returning, and this plays into, again, the preparation with the athletes that have been out with the pandemic, it's making rehab and that specifically that end base, but all the way through as close to their sport or their activity as possible. So as you said, like you can do a test and you can check that they've got full range. You can make sure they've got strength, but strength and strength in their sport or in that activity is two completely separate things. And I think that's evident in some of these athletes that have been training or maintaining their fitness levels all the way through this pandemic. And then they've gone back out. And as you said, you've had a number of ruptures right away. And it's because there's never quite the exact same thing as the activity that you do in training camp or in your sport. For myself, growing up, I was a figure skater for 18 years, competitive athlete. And our free programs, our longest programs were 3.5 minutes long, which does not sound like that much, but that cardio, there was absolutely nothing compared to a 3.5 minute skating program that doing cardio could do for you. I could run 5-10K. I could be on a bike for half an hour. I could do all that, be totally fine. And you're off the ice for 2 weeks and you try to do a 3.5 minute program and you can't. And I think there's just something to be said to finding the closest things you can to the situation the athlete's going to be in, both mentally and physically. And if that means they have to kind of be one-on-one against someone, what are you going to do in this case? All right, what are you going to do when a ball's actually flying at you, as opposed to just, can you balance? Can you do this on one foot? We think about those things as being, okay, well, they need to be able to be at this speed, or they need to be able to do proprioceptive things, 1 foot, hopping, balancing. But when you put them together in their sport, I think that's when it comes together.
Yeah, beautiful. And so much goes into the profession, so much goes into being an athlete, so much goes into being a human being. And I think the more we can understand the human being in the room, the better off everybody is, ourself included. We can understand our rights, our wrongs, our weaknesses, our strengths, and play to all of those things in growth and in working in the corner of the athlete. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. It is a Sunday night. It's been a great conversation to this point. And I think having you back in Toronto, having you back around, hopefully some of your colleagues, I'm not sure how many of your classmates went over to Europe with you, but I'm sure plenty. Happy to have you back and glad to have you in the neighborhood. I'm sure we'll get together and have some time to cross paths here. It's session 80. It's with Gabby Boulding, again, 2019 student recipient, 2021 candidate. So candidate recipient in 2019, certified research article award recipient for the CATA in 2021, a shining star in the space, in the academic space, and just want to wish you all the best for settling in, easing your way back in here. And I know there's some Sheridan alums, some Sheridan professorial types on here live this evening and listening to this as well. And Sheridan, York, it doesn't matter, Mount Royal, Camosun, across the country, across the globe. We're looking to connect people. We're looking to share stories and paths and allow these things to resonate, whether it's one sentence, one agreement, one disagreement, one thinking point. Gabby, you've shared so much tonight with your path. I really, truly appreciate it and am grateful to have had you on here. And we look forward to connecting again into the future in whatever way we can. We'll go again next week with session 81. It'll be Daniel Yoris, who's a strength coach. He has his own podcast, the Daniel Yoris podcast, which you should check out as well. Very entertaining, very insightful. We were still looking to get Coach Erin McElhanan on. Timing is a thing when she's out on the West Coast with UBC and things are getting rolling out there. Drew Hutchison as well to wrap up our Tommy John education series, still in the docket. We'll let everybody know that. And last but not least, our Friday special session through WFAT, the World Federation of Athletic Training and Therapy. We had a panel of 5 wonderful guests on there. It'll be published through here as well, through the Let's Chat podcast, and then through them first, and that'll be out shortly. But Gabby, this has been absolutely fantastic, and some thank yous pouring in here. And for everybody who's here live, thank you for being here. For everybody picking up the podcast, share with your cat, share with your dog, share with an uncle, share with an AT, share with an AT candidate, share with anybody who's willing to listen. This is an amazing story, and Gabby, you've touched on so many brilliant human pieces, I think, that we can strip away titles and really share experiences. And this is what it's all about. So thank you once again. I'll let you say goodnight and wrap this thing up. But truly, we haven't met in person, and to have conversations like these and share them within the profession and within the performance space, I think goes such a long way. So thank you so much. Good night, everybody. And Gabby, close it out.
Thanks so much. Thank you for having me. And I love this. I love getting to share my story and meet new people and insights, which is, again, why I went abroad, why I did it around the world. So always looking for more. If you've gotten an insight or an opinion, let's hear it.
Absolutely. Making connections by asking questions that matter. Gabby Boulding, session 80. Good night. We'll see you next week. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com, CONSULT@firststartherapy.com, on Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.